All right, welcome everyone to the virtual Pasadena Senior Center and our last Cultural Thursday of the year. I'm Annie Laskey, the Director of Events at the Pasadena Senior Center, and I really thank you for joining us on this cold, rainy, sort of half miserable day before New Year's. So hopefully we'll get some celebration going here with champagne and things about champagne, but mostly it's about sharing time with good friends. So this is, I think, what has gotten me through this whole past year. So thank you all for joining me, and especially to our special guest, Alan Chapman, yay! And Eleanor Schrader, yay! It's such a joy to be able to do this. I know my computer's asking me if I want to set up professional audio settings. I don't think I do. It didn't understand my clapping. All right. So a few housekeeping things. We will keep you muted during the majority of the presentation. And then there will be various times to unmute. And especially at the end, we'll have time for Q&A and for visiting. And now, before we get started, I want to give my official disclaimer. The Pasadena Senior Center does not endorse or condone drunken behavior. So please do not drink and drive. If you are at work while you are watching this, please hold off with your champagne till you get home. We wouldn't want to cause any accidents. And also for those of you who do not imbibe in alcoholic drinks, there's lots of fun things you can do that look like champagne and are festive. So feel free to pour yourself some ginger ale or tonic water or something and just, orange juice. It's a mimosa. Who knows whether it's champagne or not. So please, everyone, do enjoy responsibly, as we say. You are welcome to drink along. Well, it looks like, as Deborah says, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. But quite frankly, champagne is a breakfast drink as well. It doesn't have to be 5 o'clock.
Right.
So I am your presenter today, so I get to introduce myself. And usually introducing presenters for Cultural Thursdays and Masters Series, I like to sort of give the salient points of the biography that has to do with the topic. I will say that for many years, I didn't drink champagne, so I was the designated opener of the champagne bottles. So I have lots and lots of experience from early years opening champagne. So I can tell you there's a lot of fun to be had with champagne, even if you're not drinking it. More recently, my father and I, as many of you know from other things I've talked about, during lockdown had champagne breakfast every Sunday. When lockdown ended in June, we decided that we liked that tradition. So pretty much, I've had 80, 90 bottles of champagne in the last 2 years. So there you go. As a teacher, I can say that I spent 17 years with the Los Angeles Conservancy running their architectural walking tour program. So I do like giving information to people. As a historian, let's just say I'm really good at surfing the internet. And any of you really want actual factual information about this history, I suggest that you visit your local library. Take everything I say with a grain of salt, although I did do my best to double check my facts. All right, so here we go. I'm now going to share my screen, and let's see if I can figure out how to do this. And from the beginning. Okay, there we go. All right, so Champagne. What is Champagne? It is both a region of France. See, there we go, the Champagne region. It is also a drink made from grapes in that region. There are other things that champagne is. We incorrectly call sparkling wines not made in the Champagne region as champagne. And let me see if I can get my, there we go. So these are various California champagnes. So we call them champagnes incorrectly, they are sparkling wines. There is also, champagne is a color. There you go. That is the Sherwin-Williams champagne chip. So you can paint any room in your house champagne if you like. There you are. We also talk about things champagne as being frothy and light and often sort of the best of the best. So something can be the champagne of something, meaning that it's the best. So of course we all know that Miller is the champagne of beers. So you can have a lot of different things that are champagne. And one of the other things is champagne music. And they're our friend Lawrence Welk. And to tell you about champagne music, I am now going to, if I can figure out how to stop my screen share. See, this is really good. I don't stop screen share. How do I do it, Alan?
Up at the top, you have a thing that's where you share.
Oh, stop share. There we go. Okay.
And then if you want to spotlight me, that'd be great.
I am now going to hand it over to our favorite musicologist and the effervescent, the bubbling, the absolute top of everything, the champagne of radio hosts, Mr. Alan Chapman. Please welcome Alan. There we go.
I used to be an amateur secco, and I'm a pro secco. Little champagne joke for you there. I also want to mention another use of the word champagne. There used to be a popular Mercedes color that was officially called smoked silver, but people referred to that as champagne, and it looked like that Sherwin-Williams little swatch you had. Okay, so thank you for having me today, and hello everybody, glad to have you here. So if I'm going to talk about champagne music, I got to talk about Lawrence Welk. If I'm going to talk about Lawrence Welk, I obviously must talk about the accordion. Now, the accordion is one of those butts of the musician's jokes. The primary butt of musician's jokes, and I wasn't really going to talk about violas today, but just in case you've never heard a viola joke. The viola is the black sheep of the string family. The two quintessential basic viola jokes. Number one, what is the difference between a viola and an onion? And the answer is nobody cries when you cut up a viola. That's number one. Number two, what's the difference between a viola and a trampoline? And the answer is you have to take off your shoes before you jump on a trampoline. Okay, so there are tons of viola jokes, but there are a number of accordion jokes. For example, the definition of a gentleman is someone who knows how to play the accordion but doesn't. Number two, and this one has been told about other instruments, but I think it's best suited to the accordion. An accordionist has to stop by a store and pick up something. He leaves his car out front with his accordion on the seat. He forgets to lock his car. 5 minutes later, he comes back, and there on the seat are two accordions. Okay. Now, another favorite, you know Gary Larson and the Far Side, a favorite cartoon, top part of the panel, welcome to heaven, here's your harp. Bottom part, welcome to hell, here's your accordion. So the accordion does not get, sort of like the Rodney Dangerfield of the instrumental family. Okay, now, I know one of your burning questions is, who invented the accordion? Was it Johannes Accordion? Was it Jacques Accordion? No, not even Don Corleone. The historians tell us of a guy named Christian Buschmann who invented it in Berlin in the early 1820s, but the first to patent an accordion and call it by that name was a guy named Cyril Demian in Vienna, also in the 1820s. Now the Russians, the old joke is the Russians claim to have invented everything. The Russians have actually claimed that the accordion was invented by a Russian named Timofey Vorontsov, which is unlikely, but he built the first accordion factory in Russia, and by the 1860s, Russia was producing more than 700,000 accordions a year. That's 14,000 accordions a week. That's 2,000 accordions a day. Were they popular? Yes. And not just in Russia. By the 1930s, accordions were a very big deal in the United States, and all across the country there were accordion bands. A lot of them kids who had been brought together, people of different ages, but accordion bands were a very big deal. And there were a number of celebrities who played the accordion. Fred Astaire played the accordion. Jimmy Stewart played the accordion. Coco Chanel played the accordion. And then there's this guy, as pictured on TV Guide. Remember when TV Guide was something that was printed on paper? Remember that? Yeah, TV Guide, which of course was, as you can understand, the most widely circulated publication in America, because everybody needed TV Guide. Anyway, here's Welk on the cover attesting to his TV fame. He was born in a German-speaking town called Strasburg, North Dakota in 1903. When he decided on a career in music, he persuaded his father to buy him a mail-order accordion. Now, this was somewhere in the vicinity of 1919 or so. In today's dollars, that accordion cost $5,000. He got a good accordion, and he worked off this debt. He paid it off by working on the family farm until he turned 21. That's when he left home, started his career in the 1920s in North and South Dakota. He was a band leader. Among the bands that he led were the Hotsy Totsy Boys, and my personal favorite, the Honolulu Fruit Gum Orchestra. Yes. In the 1930s, he started working with bands that specialized in sweet music. There were the bands that specialized in hot music, hot swing, but he was a sweet band leader. That meant light music, that meant melodic music. And it is reported that the term champagne music originated when they played at the William Penn Hotel in Pittsburgh, that one of the dancers referred to his band's sound as light and bubbly as champagne. Now, Welk came to LA in 1951. That's when he started producing the Lawrence Welk Show, originally a local program on KTLA, broadcasting from the Aragon Ballroom in Venice Beach. 1955, the show moved to ABC Television Network, ran until 1982. And from the beginning, they decided they would visualize the champagne theme with a bubble machine that sent streams of large bubbles across the bandstand. Originally, it was built to produce soap bubbles, at least until the musicians complained about their instruments getting built up of soapy bubbles. So they converted it from a soap bubble machine to a glycerin bubble machine. And during the first year, it actually ran continuously. If you watch the show, there were bubbles streaming against the musicians and the instruments continuously. But then after a year, they decided, let's turn it off. Let's just run it during the opening and closing champagne music. And whenever the orchestra played a polka or a waltz, Welk himself would dance with the band's female vocalist known as the Champagne Lady. And some of you might remember the most famous Champagne Lady of all, Norma Zimmer. And the beautiful Norma Zimmer, there she is. Now, I have a very profound personal connection to Lawrence Welk, because about the time that I started buying sheet music, he had a hit with an instrumental version of a German song called Calcutta. I don't know if you remember it, but if you don't, I will perform for you Calcutta. I see there's a reaction there. Thank you so much. Now, when Calcutta reached #1 on the charts, and it stayed there for 2 weeks, when it got there, Welk was 57 years old, which at the time made him the oldest artist to have a #1 pop single. He held the record only for 3 years. It was broken 3 years later when a 63-year-old Louis Armstrong hit #1 with Hello, Dolly. But at least for those 3 years, Lawrence Welk was the oldest artist to have a pop single. Now, if you can remember how Welk speaks English haltingly, it's understandable when I tell you, not just was he born in a German-speaking town in North Dakota, he didn't speak English until he was 21. He said he never felt comfortable speaking it in public, and because of his command or limited command of English, there are a number of funny stories about things that Welk said, and I will conclude by just sharing my favorite. It was the time that he was introducing a big Duke Ellington hit, which he introduced as take thee a train. And there you have it. That's all I have to say about champagne, Welk, and accordions, and I turn it back to the lovely Annie Laskey.
Yay! All right, well, I'm going to just for a moment here allow people to, let's see, how do I get this? Allow them to unmute themselves just for a moment so that you can all give Mr. Chapman the fabulous accolades that he deserves.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really just completely delightful.
Thank you.
And now all of you can go and mute yourselves again. And for those of you who haven't had the pleasure before of visiting with Alan Chapman, just a shout out that he does a master's series for us every year. This in 2022, I believe it will be your 38th year when you come to us in the summer. It was before you were born.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, 38.
Started in 1931.
Yeah. So really, you just get a taste of how wonderful. And I so appreciate it because there is absolutely nothing that you do not know, Alan, about music. So.
No, thank you.
And no jokes that you don't know either. So
that's true.
There you are. All right. Well, we will get moving back along here. It's hard for me to let go of Lawrence Welk and Alan Chapman, but we will continue. There is much more that we need to be doing here. So I am now going to share my screen again. Let's hope this works and get back to where we left off. Let's see, from current slide. There we are. Okay, we left off with Alan talking about Lawrence Welk. We're now going to talk a little bit about champagne. So what is champagne? So in the traditional method, first of all, the grapes have to come from the area, the Champagne region of France. You harvest the grapes. You make wine out of the grapes. You put the wine into a bottle. Are created as there is what's called a secondary fermentation in the bottle. You then cork the bottle. Then we're going down the other way. I'm not following my own pattern. You then have to get all the sediment out of the bottle. Lastly, you need to make sure that it's sweet enough and it tastes right. So what they call dosage, which is possibly adding sugar to it. And then you cork it and cage it so it doesn't get away. So that's your basic, very short version of how champagne is, or sparkling wines with the champagne method are made. There are two ways of finishing champagne. The method traditionnelle, or method champenoise, is when the sparkling wine, it's made in the traditional way, the secondary fermentation takes place in the bottle. And there you see it in method traditionnelle. All good champagnes will have this on their label. It takes a lot of time and can be very expensive to create champagne this way. So for big bulk amounts of not as fine champagne, there's something called a Charmat method. And the Charmat is actually takes its name from its inventor, Eugene Charmat. And it's also known as I've lost the name. It's a vat method. So basically, once the first fermentation has taken place, the second fermentation takes place in a big stainless steel vat, which is, it makes a drinkable champagne. This label here is from a Barefoot Bubbly, which continually takes prizes at the county fair. It's just that it's at a much lower price point because it's less expensive to create sparkling wine that way. So now we are going to move ourselves on a little bit. So the history of champagne. How did this come about? Well, the Champagne region, as you see here, it's just a little bit to the east of Paris. They're in the north part of France, and it gets cold up there. And something very strange was happening. they were really jealous of their southern neighbors. So northern Burgundy and southern Burgundy had these beautiful red, ripe grapes, and they made beautiful wine. But in Champagne, it's colder. And so the grapes ripen slower. They are less sugary. They're more acidic. And something else happened is that when the weather turns cold and you are fermenting grape, the fermenting the wine, you think it's done and you bottle the wine, but the fermentation has actually gone dormant. It hasn't stopped. And so then when the weather warms up again, the fermentation, the little yeasty bits, which aren't really quite dead yet, decide to start fermentation again, and they are creating little bubbles. Those little bubbles happen inside the bottle. And you can imagine if you are storing all of your bottles, this is actually a modern day thing, but if one of those bottles, which is made out of a fairly weak glass, we're talking about the 1500s, 1600s, and it explodes. Okay, the bottle next to it then explodes, the bottle under it explodes, and pretty soon you might have lost up to 90% of your wine in your cellar. So the French winemakers of the Champagne region were doing their level best to get the bubbles out of Champagne. They wanted those beautiful, deep, rich red Burgundies that their neighbors to the south were getting. So we've heard of this guy, Dom Perignon, Benedictine monk. He was the Abbey of Saint Pierre de Hautevillers, and he was their cellar master, and he made all sorts of wonderful advances in winemaking that were all aimed at getting those darn little bubbles out of that wine. He didn't like the bubbles. The French didn't like the bubbles. Quite frankly, the only people who liked the bubbles at this point were the British and the Russians. The French, no. So the big myth of Dom Perignon creating champagne, nope, sorry. For our purposes in Champagne history, really, he's just the namesake of one of the best champagnes on the market, Dom Perignon. So sorry, Dom, he tried his hardest to not have bubbles happen. So who do we really have to thank for modern champagne and for those bubbles? A woman, of course. So Barbe Nicole Ponsardine Co. You might know the champagne label of Veuve Clicquot. Veuve is French for widow. She was the widow Clicquot. So Barbe Nicole was born in 1777. She was the daughter of a fellow in the textile industry. And she was then married to a fellow who was the son of another member of the textile industry. So kind of an arranged marriage. But her and her husband, Francois, both really loved wine. And he was with the Clicquot family, who had a small interest in a winemaking and exporting business. So Barbe Nicole and her young husband, so they were both in their 20s, started creating wine, and they liked the champagne, and they found that, what we know as champagne, the sparkling wine, and they found that people did like to drink it. So as they started this business, a couple of things happened. One is that the Napoleonic War happened. So 1803 to 1815, all of Europe was at war, and it was not a good time for the French winemaking industry. The other is that Francois Clicquot died fairly young, just 6 years into their marriage. So here the widow Clicquot is left with a failing wine business and not sure what to do about it, except that she knew what she wanted to do about it. She wanted to keep making wine. This must have been one amazing woman, because she talked her father-in-law into funding her to the amount of what would be about $1 million in today's money in continuing the wine business. So she did a couple of very savvy things, one of which was to smuggle her sparkling wine to Amsterdam and have it ready so that as soon as the wars were over and the blockade was lifted, about 1815, she rushed her wine into Russia as fast as she could because they liked the sparkling stuff. Well, she got there before everybody else. Consequently, Tsar Alexander liked her stuff best, and he proclaimed he wasn't going to drink anything except Clicquot. And that just really made everything. But she also is famous for something else. Basically, the way we drink champagne today, the way it looks. So when you are fermenting your second fermentation in the bottle, all of that dead yeast sinks to the bottom of your bottle. How do you get it out of the bottle? You need to do something, because drinking murky, sparkling wine with dead yeast at the bottom, not appetizing. She figured out that if you turn the bottle over and shake it a little bit and keep doing that over a period of time, like you see in this photo, the bottles are upside down, that the sediment is going to go into the neck. And that way you can release the sediment without losing much of the wine and without disturbing too many of the bubbles. You're going to get cleaner wine. You're going to get more sparkling wine, and you can do it a whole lot faster than what they were doing before, which was taking one bottle and pouring it into another bottle and back and forth. So that really created a worldwide craze on champagne, because now there was a lot more of it and it was better and people started drinking it more. Well, you can imagine that having to hand turn every bottle is going to be really time consuming. And it is. And indeed, some of the finest of the champagne houses and the most expensive champagne you can buy today is still going to be turned what they call riddled by hand. However, of course, back at the turn of the century, a fellow created what is called, I believe, a gyro pallet, a modern riddling machine, so that you no longer have to turn the bottles by hand. Now a machine will turn them for you. So you can have either hand-turned, very, very high-end champagne, or the gyro pallet. So there is so much more information about the Dear Widow Clicquot. There's a book about her, and some of this information I have just said is taken from that book. And I will say that this program today is because I personally love drinking Veuve Clicquot, and that's my celebration champagne. And I was looking at the label, I'm like, okay, who was she? I know it means widow. What does that mean? And then I found out all this information about her, which is really pretty fun and exciting, I think. So just a little bit to end this portion. So champagne production, that is the actual champagne created in the Champagne region, sparkling wine, 300 million bottles a year. The entire sparkling wine industry, and then we're talking about Prosecco and Asti Spumante and all that stuff, is estimated at 2 billion bottles sold worldwide annually. So it is really quite a large industry. And I'm guessing that if people are like me, that during this last year or two of the pandemic, drinking more champagne, it was actually hard to find Veuve Clicquot at the local establishments. But of course, I managed because I'm diligent. So now we're just going to go to a little bit of art. So I'm going to stop my screen share. And actually, let's see, before, if anybody has any questions that are burning at the moment, put it in the chat. Otherwise, we will we'll come back to questions at the end, which I probably won't be able to answer for you. Oh dear, Eleanor has just walked away.
No, okay. I'm here. No, I'm here. I'm right here.
Okay, she's back. All right, well, I'm now going to shift my spotlight to the marvelous Eleanor Schrader. Eleanor is an art historian and professor who has also been with us for Master's Series. Oh, it was just her first this year. So you got 37 more before you can catch up with Alan. So sorry about that. But teaches all over. So she will take us through a little bit of the art of champagne.
Oh, Annie, thank you so much for that great information. I have been learning so much from you today, and I didn't mean to give you a little heart attack for a moment there. I just got a message that the plumber will be here at 6 o'clock to vacuum out all the 2 inches of water in my house. So anyway, all right. So everybody, I'd like to show you a few champagne posters, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now and take you through about 15 posters, talk a little bit about where they came from and the history of them. Here we go. All right. So I thought this would be a nice one to start out with. Life has no troubles when we dance among the bubbles. I believe this is a bit more modern poster, but it seemed like a more appropriate poster to start out with. So poster art started around the time of the Art Nouveau era, even a little bit before that. And we have Toulouse-Lautrec to thank for that. He was, of course, the artist of that time frame in France, in Montmartre. And he actually started his claim to fame as drawing menu covers. And of course, we know him for all of his wonderful art of the era. So poster art, to a great extent, we owe to Henri Toulouse-Lautrec, Alphonse Mucha, Cheret, Steinlen, many of these wonderful graphic artists of this period, starting around the 1860s, 1870s. To give us these advertisements. This is the beginning of when magazines started, the way that you and I would understand a magazine today. Of course, newspapers have been around for a long time, but along with these magazines, the importance of advertising your products came along. And so now we have Moet Chandon. This was established in 1743 by the wine trader Claude Moet, and he began shipping his wine from Champagne to Paris. And we also have Louis XV to thank for the consumption of a lot of champagne around that time. And so the various aristocrats and individuals, the nobles, wanted to be part of that wine drinking. And so jump forward about a century, and now we are seeing many more champagne makers emerge, and they of course all had to advertise their products. Moet and Chandon merged with Hennessy Cognac in 1971 and with Louis Vuitton in 1987 to become LVMH, which is Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, the largest luxury group in the world. And they hold a royal warrant as supplier of champagne to Queen Elizabeth II. On the right-hand poster, you see Moet White Star. It was a staple for many decades, but discontinued at the beginning of 2009. Their best-known label, Dom Perignon, of course, named for the Benedictine monk that Annie was talking about just a little while ago, and their best-selling brand, Brut Imperial, was introduced in the 1860s. Now, the whole point of advertising, of course, is that sex sells. So here are these, for the time, relatively scantily clad young ladies. The one on the left is, as Alphonse Mucha would have talked about, more in a quote-unquote Byzantine style, which is a whole bunch of styles all brought together as something different and exotic. So not only was the idea that the young ladies would probably be part of the package if you were to buy this champagne, and that also you would be an educated person who drank this champagne, as you would know about the various historical styles. And especially at this time, as individuals traveled a lot into lands other than France or Western European lands, especially Middle Eastern lands. So there was a lot of interest in design that at that time they would have called exotic. We don't really use that term anymore. And here a lovely lady amongst the flowers. And so his posters became very famous for a variety of objects. And a little bit more in the style of Toulouse-Lautrec, although this is an artist whose name was Leonetto Capiello. And I'm always so happy when Annie asks me to speak, or any of the other schools I teach at, because this gives me a chance to do my research, and this is my joy, and found out about Leonetto Capiello, who was an Italian and French poster art designer and painter, and I found quite a few posters designed by him. He is often called the father of modern advertising because of his innovations in poster design. Others will give that title to Henri Toulouse-Lautrec, but in any case, one of the many leaders of poster design. And as I was doing my research on this, something kind of hit me in this poster. Art Nouveau would be the period of about 1895 to about 1914, and then Art Deco will come after that, which I'll talk about some Art Deco posters as well, and then I'll talk about some mid-century and more modern posters. So I'm kind of moving along chronologically for all of you. Now, something that I tell my students at UCLA, where I teach design and architecture and art, is that there's really nothing new. Every time somebody comes up with a new idea, they've probably seen it some other place in history. And that's why I tell them how important it is to study history. And I realized that if you remember this from a couple of years back, actually 2014, this idea of breaking the internet, thinks that she has it all over the internet, that she's invented something new. Nope, we've already seen it in one of these early posters of the Art Nouveau era. Art Nouveau being very curvaceous, lots of snake-like lines, whiplash curves. This period that was called the Beautiful Age, the Belle Époque era. And so, of course, this lovely lady drinking champagne, you too can be chic like her. Also, don't forget that bustles were very popular at that time. We go through various fashion styles, whereas when we get to the Art Deco period of the 20s, people want to be very thin, and those close knitting dresses such as the flappers wore. So, of course, the advertising will reflect that. Okay, and then another advertisement of this beautiful era, the Belle Époque era. This was Annie's favorite, so that's why I wanted to include this, and I thank you for including a redhead in this. But again, all of these flowing ribbons, these whiplash curves, and again, a very scantily clad woman for this time. So everybody drank champagne. It wasn't necessarily something more for men or women, but again, she's having a great time. She's a party girl, and that's the whole point, because she's showing that she's drinking a full glass of bubbly here. Another one by Capiello, excuse me, was for an Italian sparkling wine. So I've learned my lesson from Annie and from doing my research now. And so this is not champagne because it's not made inside of France. And it took me a while to figure out the figure in this poster. Being 1922, this is going into the Art Deco era, where generally we have much more lines and aerodynamics and geometry in the paintings and then the art of that time. But it's not as if you wake up January 1st, 1920, and now we're going to do all geometry. There will be a little bit of a transition period between the more curvaceous Art Nouveau and the more geometric Art Deco. So after I looked closely, I realized that this is a woman's face, but that thing makes me nervous. I'm afraid this is going to fall down at any time. But again, this wonderful traditional champagne glass that we tend to kind of connect with Lawrence Welk and sipping champagne glasses at the Coconut Grove. As Annie has pointed out, there's quite a variety of glasses that we will use for champagne. And then J. Stahl was another well-known poster artist of the era. Here again, a very happy lady, drink this champagne, you'll be happy. And then she is surrounded by all of these champagne grapes. And notice as we start to go a little bit farther that there is a theme of this champagne color, as Annie pointed out, this very subtle yellowish color that will be pervasive throughout the posters. Okay. Now, this one I brought in because I thought, well, this is kind of creepy. Where's this woman's eyes? And now I looked at the time frame. This is an Art Deco poster. And again, now we're going into an era where we have more aerodynamics, more straight lines in the Art Deco period. And it hit me, this looks like the poster for Metropolis. I'm sure many of you remember this movie by Fritz Lang about basically robots taking over. So, well, there's much more to it than that, but I wondered if a connection had been made between this poster and the movie. I couldn't find any particular connection. Is this going to give her a moment of like being so taken with drinking champagne that she's just rolling her eyes back in ecstasy? Don't quite know what to do with this, but I wanted to make that connection for you. Okay. All right, and then again, a very frivolous kind of poster, a lady who has some of her lady parts, shall we say, covered up with the burst of the champagne as she twirls her champagne grapes around, and she's very happy up here with her yellow colored hair, and almost as if she has maybe a leotard or some tight fitting form here. It's not really very clear that she is exposing her breasts, but again, you see the point is that all of the fun that you can have with champagne. Okay. And I also discovered that it wasn't only the posters and the bottles, the labels, but also they manufactured the fans. So here we have this same poster now done in a fan, which of course has been popular throughout history. But I thought this was an interesting way to advertise the champagne as well. And then moving a bit more into the mid-century era, this reminds me of a lot of the graphics of the era, a little simpler lines. And I'm often reminded of how some of these mid-century modern posters look a bit like the drawings for Mattel, the Barbie dolls. So of course, here's the epitome of a woman as little girls are being given these dolls. And this very simple lady, simple lines, I should say, and just a little swatch of the champagne color in the beautiful glasses, the flutes. And so this translates as the enchanted land of happy hours. So here we are. Now, when Annie and I were looking at this yesterday, we just had a moment. And we both thought it was Art Deco because of the cloche, the tight fit hat. Notice how it's a champagne cork and the wire that goes around it. And then upon doing some more research, this was a company that was started in 1960, Lebar and Regnier. And this poster is actually from 1960. Beautiful take on an Art Deco type of poster. And then some of the most famous posters are the Taittinger champagne, founded by Pierre-Charles Taittinger in 1932. And I've run across a little block now. I've run across that some people think that this is Grace Kelly behind the champagne glass, and others who insist that it's Catherine Deneuve. So my research shows that one historian cites it as a 1979 promotional item given away with every case of the champagne. designed to honor the life of Princess Grace so far, but then she died 3 years later in 1982. And this brings the question, did she approve this? Or another piece of information says that it was part of a campaign in 1988. And I don't think that it would have looked back upon the life of Grace Kelly. It might have been a little inappropriate. I'm not quite sure if that was the case. And one information I read said that this chignon, the bun that they wear behind, was something that both Deneuve and Kelly would have worn. So we have a little mystery on our hands. Nevertheless, many of us ladies might remember that much coveted Barbie doll dress of the black and then the net down at the bottom, or even the I Love Lucy show where Lucy wears a dress like this and she can't sit down. So in any case, there's a lot of memories that go with this particular glass. And a little close up, how beautifully done, even with the bubbles coming up the dress, and then a little bit closer. And looking at both Catherine Deneuve and Grace Kelly, I could not really tell the difference between the side portraits of them. So I will leave that up to you. So I wish I had a better answer, but. And then lastly, a couple of newer campaigns for the Champagne Company. Again, a very beautiful Art Deco kind of figure here with the long dress, the very sinuous curves. And then lastly, we have a more recent campaign, which again does go back to that original campaign, whether it be 1979 or 1988, it still honors that very much beloved poster that we saw here. And so that is just a quick history of some poster art for the Champagne. And so I will now turn it back to Annie. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Eleanor. And if you all want to unmute yourselves for another moment and give some thanks to Eleanor.
Thank you.
Do you want to unshare your screen, Eleanor?
Very fun.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was, I love the images. Thank you for finding all of those.
You're welcome.
Especially the Kim Kardashian. Really fantastic. So thank you so much, Eleanor. That was awesome. So, all right, now you can all mute yourselves again. So now comes the time in our program, and I'm gonna then now spotlight myself again for, the drinking of the champagne, because, we've talked about, all the history, but so I have my Veuve Clicquot here. And I just want to demonstrate a little bit about the opening and pouring of champagne. So, you get to open the little cage. And one of the things when I was just a wee child and not drinking this stuff, I remember a trip to the Chandon Winery in Napa and them telling us how to best open a bottle of champagne. So always have a towel on hand, and you just press up a little bit with the cork, and there it popped. But because I have the towel on it, there's no overflow. You don't want to lose a drop of this stuff. The other is that I can't really show it to you, but champagne bottles usually have a little indentation at the bottom. So if you've got a strong enough hand, you put your thumb there, the hand here, and I happen to like open coupe glasses. And if you pour it on the side instead of straight into the glass, you will have very little foam and you won't destroy the bubbles. So that's the way to pour champagne. And then I forgot to grab one from the other room. There are caps that you put on the champagne that will keep it good for several days. So you can, like when I was saying, my dad and I have, champagne brunch every Sunday. We have like one glass each. put the cap back on the champagne and drink it for the next couple of days. So we're not getting completely toasted every single Sunday. So now I'm just going to share my screen for a few more stories of cocktails. So let's see, there we go. Okay, so from here, when we're talking about drinking champagne, what kind of glass do you use? Well, I was looking this up and trying to figure out what kind of glass does what kind of taste, you know, so like what's the best kind of glass to use? And one of the places online said, whatever you like drinking out of, that's what you should use. And my other suggestion to you is, you know, just try it out. Just try champagne in a whole bunch of different kinds of glasses and see what you like. So champagne, especially good champagne, is absolutely fantastic and perfect just by itself. However, champagne is actually also a good cocktail wine. So here's a few choices. Let me get this going again. There we go. So I'm going to give you four cocktails that use champagne. And the first is a classic champagne cocktail. You just put a spiral of lemon rind, a lump of sugar, 2 dashes of bitters, Angostura, like an orange bitters. Use a champagne glass, fill with champagne. You got a champagne cocktail. I have an old Mr. Boston Deluxe Official Bartender's Guide from 1961. This is my typical go-to for champagne, for any kind of cocktail. But I felt it was very important that we understand how these taste. So I am lucky enough to have access to an expert taster here. So please virtually here welcome my father, Tom Laskey. So he's going to take us through the cocktail. So here he's holding the cocktail for us. And now he's drinking the cocktail. And yes, it's a thumbs up for the champagne cocktail. Another unusual cocktail that I couldn't believe was in Mr. Boston, and then I found it someplace else, is called a black velvet. And according to Drinking with Dickens, which by the way is a delightful book to read as well as recipes for, written by the great grandson of Charles Dickens, says into a silver tankard pour half a pint of champagne, half a pint of Guinness. I didn't have a silver tankard, so I just used a big goblet. And what does our expert say? Okay, well, there it is. Oh, and Mr. Boston says to put ice cubes in it. That's why there's ice cubes in it. Okay, we're tasting it. And, oh, no, not so much. Okay, I will agree. It tasted a little bit like Coca-Cola that's gone off. But hey, we drank it anyway because there's champagne involved and Guinness stout. All right, for our third cocktail, we have a lovely Christmas number here. This is the poinsettia. I found this on several different internet cocktail recipe sites. So a half an ounce of Cointreau or any other orange liqueur, about 3 ounces of cranberry juice unsweetened, 3 ounces or so of champagne. You shake the Cointreau and the cranberry with ice so it's nice and cold, strain into a champagne glass. I chose a flute for this. You top it with champagne and garnish with cranberries, rosemary, add lime if you like. So, our taster's opinion, all dressed up for Christmas. Okay, trying hard not to get the rosemary up his nose while he's drinking it. And oh yes, definitely, thumbs up to the poinsettia. To bring this to a close, I am sharing the French 75. So this is, depending upon, if you're a gin person, it's a gin cocktail. If you're a champagne person, it's a champagne cocktail. It was developed in the teens and 20s. French 75 refers to the 75 millimeter gun that the French used during World War I. One of the traditions is that it's served in a Collins glass, which is sort of the shape of a 75 millimeter shell. At least that's what one of the history things I read on the internet said. So the Here's How cocktail book, 1927. This drink is what really won the war for the Allies. And the Savoy cocktail book, a true classic, 1930, hits with remarkable precision. So let's see what our expert says about this. Okay, he's all dressed up with his French beret for his French 75. He's taking a drink, he's thinking, and oh yes, definitely, he agrees. This is a good choice. I will say the French 75 is a fantastic cocktail, but be very careful. You can't really taste the gin. There's 2 ounces of gin in that, and do not drink and drive when you are having a French 75. They do pack a wallop. So thank you, Tom Laskey. Thank you, Dad, for being our expert with our tasting. And that ends the presentation portion of this. So Happy New Year, everyone. Cheers. And now I'm going to stop my share. Cheers to everybody. I'm going to remove my spotlight and look at everybody in the gallery. And I will also allow you to, let's see, how do I do this? Okay, you can unmute yourselves if you like. So Happy New Year, everybody.
Hey, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Fabulous program, Annie.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
So do we have any burning questions that I can pretend to answer?
Is your dad married?
So it looks like Patricia has one, but you're muted, Patricia. You'll need to unmute. Try that. Okay. Whoops. Get it? Okay. Well, no.
Yeah.
Sorry. It looks like Patricia's having a little. When you're able to unmute, Patricia, just shout out, and we'll come to you. So anyway, I just I wish everyone the happiest of New Years. And
I have a question.
Yes, Susan.
Yeah. So I drink Prosecco, sparkling wine from Italy. So that would that be considered champagne?
No.
No,
but it's like
Prosecco, I meant to look up the difference between Prosecco and Cremant and Asti Spumante. I believe that
they can see you,
Prosecco
right?
is,
They can see you. See this? This is what they see.
Whoops, I just muted Patricia again. I'll unmute you in a moment. So
Yeah.
the differences between the various sparkling wines, some are sweeter than others. The main thing is that champagne, it can only be called champagne if it's from the Champagne region of France. Wines that are sparkling, that are basically champagne in all but name, they are method traditional. And I would have to look up on Google how Prosecco fits in that. I think of it as sweeter than a traditional British champagne.
Oh, it's really it's not always sweet, Annie. This is Barbara. I lived in France for 25 years, but what I have just uncorked is a really nice bottle of cava, Spanish sparkling cava, and it's not sweet. It's just very tasty.
Yeah, and actually that's cava is there's some very good Spanish sparkling wines.
Leave this and go.
Okay. Patricia, you're now unmuted.
Oh, good. I wanted to ask you what drinking book you had. Were all of those drinks out of one book, or?
No, they were out of a couple. But I'll just grab it here.
I'd like
Old
to try
Mr.
some of
Bot.
them. Old.
But there are dozens and dozens of cocktail books.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of things on the internet, you can just Google cocktail champagne and get 20 different recipes. And
Okay.
if you're looking for a cocktail book, I'd say go to a bookstore, like go to Vroman's, and just ask where the cocktail section is and leaf through them, because everyone's different. And I like this one because it's simple. The recipes are short. They're not really fancy.
And that's Old Mr. Boston. Is that Old Mr. Boston?
Yeah, Mr. Boston was a brand of alcohol. So these are all telling you to use Old Mr. Boston whiskey and Old Mr. Boston gin and Old Mr. Boston rum. It was first published in 1935. Mine is 1961. I have no idea if it's still available. But it's just a very basic bartender guide.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That leaves me somewhere to go. All right. Thank you. And I enjoyed your father so much. It was so much fun. He dressed all up.
Exactly. We need to applaud
There
him.
you are. Okay, I'm gonna spotlight Dad. So all right, wave at everybody, Dad.
Yay!
Wave. Hello. Oh, I know he can't hear me or something.
Yes,
wave.
I can.
Wave.
I can hear you just fine, and I thank everybody. I think that we all had a wonderful time.
Are you sober? Are you sober?
Quite.
He's not actually drinking this morning, but I will just I'll just say that I needed to get the French 75, and the time was running out. So on the other morning, I said, Dad, would you like a cocktail for breakfast? You don't have to go anywhere today. So I fed him the French 75 and took pictures. And about an hour later, I saw him just lying on the couch like, oh, okay, I think I'm going to sleep for a couple of hours now. So there you are. Thank you, Dad.
Thank you.
All right, there we go. We'll remove and for me. So let's see. That's now back to so I can see you all. All right. Well, again, thank you all for joining. Does anybody have any more last comments? Oops. Hi. Okay. All right. Well, I thank you all for joining us. This has been really, really great. I hope I'm not breaking up. You can still hear me, right? All right. Well, thank you so much on behalf of myself, my father, Alan Chapman, and Eleanor Schrader. Thank you so much for joining us. And the Pasadena Senior Center wishes you all the best.